The letter arrived on a warm Sunday morning. A bright orange envelope taped to my front door like a scarlet mark of shame. I'd been up early that day, standing barefoot on my back deck with a cup of coffee still steaming in my hand. The lake stretched out before me like a sheet of glass, smooth and silver in the dawn light. Cicadas hummed their lazy rhythm in the pines. A heron glided low over the water, its wings barely disturbing the surface. This was my favorite time of day. The quiet hour before the world woke up and reminded you it had opinions about everything you did. I bought this house 2 years ago. It wasn't luck. It was decades of saving, investing smart, and working my way up through commercial real estate until I could finally afford something most people only dream about: a home on the water. Crescent Shores wasn't just another gated community. It was the community. Manicured lawns, lakefront views, and the kind of neighbors who drove European sedans and wore linen on weekdays. I thought I'd finally made it. Then I saw the envelope. Notice of violation. Unauthorized watercraft storage. Below that, in bold red letters, $1,500 fine. And at the bottom, scrawled in smug, looping cursive, "Please remove your boat immediately. HOA President Karen Whitmore." I stood there staring at it, the coffee going cold in my hand. My boat, a modest 15-foot fishing boat I'd tied to the dock behind my house, was somehow a crime now. Not parked on the lawn, not blocking anyone's view, just floating peacefully in the water, exactly where boats are supposed to be. I crumpled the letter and tossed it on the kitchen counter. I'd deal with it later. But Karen Whitmore had other plans. Karen was the kind of woman who weaponized politeness, mid-50s, with a crisp blonde bob that never moved in the wind. She dressed like she was perpetually on her way to brunch. Pastel blazers, pearl necklaces, and shoes that clicked like a countdown timer on tile. She'd been HOA president for 6 years, and in that time, she'd transformed Crescent Shores into her personal fiefdom. Every mailbox had to be beige, every hedge trimmed to regulation height, every car parked in garages out of sight, because curb appeal matters, people. She ruled through fear and fines, and everyone knew it. I first noticed her watching me about a month after I moved in. I'd be mowing the lawn, and I'd catch her standing at the edge of her driveway, arms crossed, staring. Or I'd be unloading groceries, and she'd drive by slowly, like she was cataloging every bag. It felt invasive, but I didn't say anything. I'd learned a long time ago that some battles aren't worth the energy. But the boat was different. 3 days after the first notice, I came home to find her standing on my dock, phone in hand, taking pictures. She didn't even flinch when I called out to her. "Excuse me, can I help you?" She turned, slow and deliberate, like I was the one interrupting her. "Just documenting the violation," she said, her voice syrupy and sharp at the same time. Boats aren't allowed on community property without HOA approval. I stepped closer, keeping my tone calm. "The boat's not on community property. It's docked on the water," she smiled, thin, tight, victorious. "The dock is connected to community land. The lake is managed by the HOA. Therefore, this," she gestured at my boat like it was leaking toxic waste, "is a violation. According to what bylaw? Section 12, subsection C. I suggest you read it." She clicked another photo, then walked past me like I was invisible. "If it's not gone by the weekend, the fines escalate." I watched her go, jaw tight, pulse thrumming in my temples. The harassment didn't stop there. Within a week, I received 3 more letters. One, for dock use without authorization. Another, for unapproved exterior lighting, because I'd installed a small lantern on the pier so I could fish at dusk. And a third for failure to comply with previous violations. Each one came with a fine. Each one was signed by Karen. I started asking around. Turns out I wasn't the only one. Karen had fined nearly everyone in the neighborhood at some point. $100 here for a mailbox flag, 200 there for Christmas lights left up too long. But the amounts I was getting hit with? They were different. Aggressive. Personal. One neighbor, an older white guy who'd lived here for 20 years, pulled me aside at the mailboxes one afternoon. "She's got it out for you, man," he said quietly. I've never seen her go this hard. I didn't need him to spell out why, but I didn't argue. I just nodded, thanked him, and went home. Because here's the thing about people like Karen. They thrive on reaction. They want you to blow up, to lose your cool, to give them ammunition. So I stayed quiet, smiled when I had to, kept my head down, and I started digging. I didn't build a career in commercial real estate by being reckless. I built it by being thorough. So while Karen was busy stacking fines, I was pulling records. Property deeds, HOA bylaws, historical land titles, water rights documentation. I stayed up late, cross-referencing documents, making calls to county clerks and title companies. What I found was interesting. Very interesting. But I didn't say a word. Not yet. 2 weeks after the first notice, the HOA scheduled a public hearing. Karen sent out a memo to the entire neighborhood, framing it like a trial. The subject line read, "Community Standards Enforcement, Mandatory Attendance." The implication was clear. She was going to make an example of me. I showed up early. The meeting was held in the community center, a bland beige room that smelled like stale coffee and printer toner. Folding chairs were arranged in rows facing a long table, where Karen sat flanked by 3 board members, all of them stiff and serious, like they were presiding over a federal case. Residents trickled in, whispering, stealing glances at me. I sat in the front row, arms folded, expression neutral. Karen called the meeting to order with a sharp rap of her gavel. She didn't waste time. "We're here tonight to address multiple ongoing violations by a resident who has refused to comply with community standards." She looked directly at me, eyes cold. "Mr. Langston has been issued 4 separate notices regarding unauthorized watercraft storage, dock usage, and unapproved modifications. Despite repeated warnings, he has made no effort to correct these issues." She clicked a remote, and a photo of my boat appeared on the screen behind her. Zoomed in, framed like evidence at a crime scene. "This community lake," she continued, her voice rising with authority, "belongs to the Crescent Shores Homeowners Association. No private vessels are permitted without board approval. Mr. Langston has shown blatant disregard for the rules we all agreed to uphold." Murmurs rippled through the room. A few people nodded. Karen's allies. She turned to me, triumphant. "Do you have anything to say in your defense?" I stood slowly. The room went quiet. I reached into my bag and pulled out a single document. Folded, crisp, official. I walked to the table and slid it across to Karen. "Actually," I said, my voice calm and steady, "I do." Karen glanced down, her smile still fixed in place. But as her eyes moved across the page, something shifted. Her brow furrowed, her lips parted slightly. One of the board members leaned over to look, then another. The whispers started again, confused, urgent. Karen's voice came out thin, uncertain. What is this?" I met her eyes. "That," I said, "is a certified property deed for the lake. And the dock you're referencing," she blinked. "I don't—" "Let me make it simple," I continued, louder now so everyone could hear. "The lake doesn't belong to the HOA. Karen." Her face went pale. "It belongs to me." The room exploded. The next HOA meeting wasn't about me defending myself. It was about Karen defending her lies. And this time, the whole neighborhood showed up to watch. Storm clouds rolled in that evening, low and bruised, thunder rumbling in the distance like a warning. The air smelled like wet grass and ozone. By the time I pulled into the community center parking lot, cars were already lining the street. More than I'd ever seen for an HOA meeting. Word had spread fast. The man Karen tried to fine, apparently owns the lake. I stepped inside to a room packed wall to wall. Every seat was taken. People stood along the back wall, arms crossed, eyes sharp. The energy was different tonight. Tense, electric, like everyone had been holding their breath for years and finally sensed a chance to exhale. Karen sat at the head table, rigid as a statue, a stack of printed violation notices in front of her like a fortress. Her face was carefully blank, but I could see the tension in her jaw, the way her fingers gripped the edge of the table just a little too tight. The board members beside her looked nervous. One of them, a younger guy named Todd, who'd always struck me as a yes man, kept glancing at the door like he wanted to bolt. I took my seat in the front row. The murmuring quieted. Karen cleared her throat and called the meeting to order. Her voice clipped. Tonight's session will address ongoing disputes regarding property use and HOA jurisdiction. She didn't look at me. I raised my hand. I'd like to speak first. Her eyes snapped to mine, hard and cold. You'll wait your turn. No, I said evenly. I won't. The room went silent. I stood and walked to the front, carrying a leather folder. I didn't ask permission. I just took the floor. Most of you know me, I began, my voice calm but carrying. I've lived here 2 years. I pay my dues. I follow the rules. I mind my business. I turned to face the crowd. But for the past month, I've been harassed, fined, and publicly humiliated by this HOA, specifically by President Whitmore, over a boat that's been docked on water I own. Karen shot to her feet. That's absurd. The HOA owns— No, Karen. I opened the folder and pulled out a stack of documents. You don't. I handed the first page to Todd, who took it with shaking hands. That's a certified property deed, dated 1978, showing the original land division when Crescent Shores was developed. The surrounding lots were sold to the HOA. But the water rights, the lake itself, and the shoreline easement remained under a private estate. Todd's eyes widened. He passed the page to the woman beside him. That estate went dormant 15 years ago, I continued. Last year I purchased it, along with all residual rights, including this lake. Karen's voice came out shrill. That's impossible. I've been managing this lake for 6 years. Managing, I repeated, letting the word hang. Not owning. I pulled out another document, a land use agreement. According to this contract, the Crescent Shores Homeowners Association is listed as a tenant licensee under my holding company. In simple terms, Karen, you've been paying maintenance fees on land and water you don't actually own. The room erupted. Voices overlapped, shocked, angry, disbelieving. A man in the back shouted, "Are you serious?" A woman near the front stood up, pointing at Karen. You told us we owned that lake. Karen's face flushed red. This is a setup. He's lying. Am I? I turned to the board. Check the county records. Call the title company. It's all public. Todd was already on his phone, fingers flying across the screen. The color drained from his face as he scrolled. He looked up at Karen, betrayed. It's true. The room exploded again, louder this time. For years, Crescent Shores had been a pressure cooker. Karen ruled with fines and fear, and everyone just took it. Because what else could you do? She had the gavel. She had the bylaws. She had the board in her pocket. But now the lid was off. One by one, residents stood and spoke, voices trembling with years of pent-up frustration. A woman in her 60s, Mrs. Alvarez, stood near the middle. She fined me $300 for hanging wind chimes, said they were visual noise. A younger guy with a beard, she made me repaint my shed 3 times because the beige wasn't the right shade. An older man, voice thick with emotion. My wife was dying. I put a small bench by the lake so she could sit and watch the water. Karen had it removed. Said it was unapproved furniture. His voice cracked. The room went quiet. Karen stood, trembling, her voice shaking with rage. I did what I had to do to maintain standards, to keep this place from turning into what, Karen? I cut her off, stepping closer. A place where people actually felt welcome? A place where they didn't live in fear of you? She opened her mouth, closed it. Her hands balled into fists. I turned back to the crowd. Respect isn't something you can find people into. It's something you earn. Applause started. Slow at first, then building. Thunderous and raw. Some people were crying. Others laughed in disbelief, like they couldn't believe this was real. Karen stood frozen, her kingdom crumbling around her. My attorney stepped forward then, a calm presence in a tailored suit. He placed a final document on the table in front of the board. This, he said, is a formal termination notice for Ms. Whitmore's position as HOA President, effective immediately, pending a new election per community bylaws. Karen's chair scraped against the floor as she shot to her feet. You can't do this. I built this community. I met her eyes, my voice low and steady. No, Karen, you just ruled it. I'm giving it back. The applause turned into cheers. Karen stood there, shaking, her face a mask of fury and humiliation. Then she grabbed her purse, shoved past the table, and stormed out, the door slamming behind her. No one followed. Weeks later, the neighborhood felt different, alive. Kids fished from the docks again, their laughter echoing across the water. Families set up picnic tables by the shore, grills smoking, music playing. Someone hung string lights along the community pier, and no one got fined for it. The lake, my lake, was open to everyone. Karen's house sat empty now, a faded for sale sign tilting in the overgrown lawn. Word around the neighborhood was she'd moved to another town, somewhere she could start fresh. I didn't wish her ill. I just hoped she'd learn something. One evening, I sat on my boat, engine off, just drifting in the golden hour light. The water rippled like liquid glass. A family waved from the shore. I waved back. I thought about what it all meant. The fines, the confrontation, the fight. It was never about money. It was never even about the boat. It was about reclaiming peace. For me. For everyone she'd made feel small. I looked out over the water, the sun sinking low and warm, and I thought, you can own a house with fear, but you can only build a home with respect. And finally, after all these years, Crescent Shores felt like home. Home.